In the dim glow of a pulsating alien vessel, suspended amidst the swirling void of deep space, an extraordinary encounter unfolded. The chamber was vast, its walls shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in rhythm with an otherworldly hum. At its center stood the alien queen, her towering form radiating an aura of both majesty and menace. Her elongated limbs moved with fluid grace, each step resonating through the metallic floor like distant thunder. Around her neck hung intricate chains adorned with crystalline ornaments, catching the ethereal light and casting prismatic reflections across the room. Before her, bound by shimmering energy restraints, stood a human male whose presence seemed incongruous against the backdrop of this alien world. His clothing, though tattered from his capture, still bore traces of Earth's military insignia, hinting at a life filled with discipline and purpose. Despite his predicament, there was something unyielding in his stance, a quiet defiance that refused to be extinguished even in the face of overwhelming odds. His eyes, reflecting both fear and determination, locked onto the queen's multifaceted gaze without flinching. The air between them crackled with tension, charged by the weight of their respective worlds colliding. The queen's attendants, insectoid creatures with iridescent exoskeletons, scuttled silently along the periphery, their clicking mandibles creating an unsettling symphony. Yet neither captor nor captive paid them any mind. All attention was focused on the singular moment that had brought them together, a moment that would soon reveal itself to be far more complex than either could have anticipated. As the queen circled her prisoner, her movements deliberate and calculated, she couldn't help but notice the subtle details that set this human apart from others she had encountered. There was an intelligence in his eyes that transcended mere survival instincts, a spark of something deeper that intrigued her despite herself. The human, for his part, maintained his composure, though his racing pulse betrayed the turmoil within. He knew that his words and actions in the coming moments could determine not only his fate but potentially that of his entire species. The queen paused before him, her multiple eyes narrowing as she studied her captive with increasing intensity. Her voice, when it finally emerged, was a complex harmony of tones that resonated through the chamber like a living thing. "You stand before me, fragile creature," she began, her words translated into perfect English through some unseen mechanism. "Yet you possess knowledge that has eluded even our most advanced minds." She extended one of her slender appendages toward him, stopping just short of touching his forehead. "Tell me, human, how is it that your primitive species has uncovered secrets we have sought for millennia?" The man swallowed hard, his throat dry despite the humid atmosphere of the chamber. He knew this moment would come, had prepared for it during the long hours of captivity, yet now that it had arrived, he found himself grappling with the weight of what he must say. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice steady despite the circumstances, "what you seek is not merely information or technology. It is understanding of connection, of unity beyond physical forms." The queen's body stiffened, her translucent skin rippling with sudden interest. "Explain yourself," she demanded, her voice dropping to a lower register that made the very air vibrate. "Our empire spans galaxies. Our technology surpasses anything your kind could comprehend. What could your species possibly understand that we do not?" The human took a deep breath, feeling the energy restraints loosen slightly. Whether intentionally or not, he couldn't tell. "It's not about technological superiority or physical dominance," he continued, choosing his words carefully. "On Earth, we've learned that true power lies in something far more fundamental. We call it empathy. The ability to connect with others not just intellectually, but emotionally, to understand perspectives vastly different from our own." The queen's multiple eyes widened fractionally, a gesture so subtle that only someone trained in reading alien expressions might have noticed. Her antennae twitched with barely contained curiosity. "Empathy," she repeated, the word sounding strange and unfamiliar in her melodic voice. "You speak of emotions, of feelings? These are weaknesses, vulnerabilities that should be eradicated, not cultivated." The human shook his head gently, aware that he was treading on dangerous ground. "Not weaknesses, Your Majesty. Strengths. Through empathy, we've overcome wars, bridged cultural divides, and created societies where diverse beings can coexist peacefully. It's what allowed us to develop technologies that complement rather than dominate life." A ripple passed through the queen's attendants, their clicking growing more agitated. The queen raised a hand, silencing them instantly. "And you believe this empathy is why your species has survived while others have fallen. There was a note of genuine curiosity in her voice now, mixed with something else. Perhaps doubt, perhaps wonder. Precisely, the human replied, feeling a surge of hope despite his precarious situation. When faced with challenges, we didn't just rely on logic or force. We reached out, connected, understood. That's how we developed solutions that benefited all parties involved, not just the strongest or most advanced. The queen stepped back, her form casting shifting shadows on the chamber walls. For several long moments, she remained silent, her multiple eyes unfocused as if processing information on levels beyond human comprehension. When she finally spoke again, her voice carried a weight that made the very foundations of the ship tremble. "Show me," she commanded, extending both arms toward him. "Prove to me that this empathy of yours is more than mere words." The queen's command hung in the air like a challenge, her multiple eyes gleaming with an intensity that suggested she had never issued such a request before. The human captive felt a wave of apprehension wash over him, knowing that whatever demonstration he provided would need to transcend mere explanation. He took a cautious step forward, the energy restraints dissolving completely as if the queen had deemed them unnecessary. "Empathy isn't something that can be demonstrated through words alone," he began, his voice carrying a newfound confidence. "It must be experienced." With careful deliberation, he reached out toward one of the queen's attendants, a smaller, more delicate creature with shimmering wings that caught the chamber's bioluminescent glow. The insectoid being recoiled instinctively, its multifaceted eyes widening in alarm. "Wait," the human said softly, maintaining his outstretched hand. "I mean no harm." To everyone's surprise, including his own, the creature hesitated before cautiously extending one of its delicate limbs. The moment their appendages touched, a visible shockwave rippled through the chamber, causing the bioluminescent patterns on the walls to flare brightly. The queen watched this interaction with mounting fascination, her antennae quivering with what appeared to be genuine surprise. "What is this?" she demanded, though her tone carried less authority and more curiosity than before. "I sense something. A connection forming where none should exist." The human nodded, maintaining his contact with the attendant. "This is empathy in action. I'm not trying to understand this creature through analysis or observation alone. I'm feeling its presence, its essence. Its fear, its curiosity, these aren't obstacles to overcome, but bridges to cross." As he spoke, the attendant's posture relaxed visibly, its wings fluttering in a pattern that seemed almost joyful. The queen's attendants began murmuring among themselves, their clicking language accelerating in tempo. One by one, they approached the human, their movements tentative yet unmistakably drawn to the strange energy emanating from the interaction. The queen watched as her entire court gradually formed a circle around the human and her attendant, their collective consciousness seeming to resonate with the unfolding demonstration. "You claim this connection is strength," the queen mused aloud, her voice softer now, almost contemplative. "Yet I see vulnerability in your stance, in your willingness to expose yourself to unknown entities." She moved closer, her towering form casting a shadow over the gathering. "Why would any being willingly make itself so open?" The human turned to face her, his expression earnest yet composed. "Because true strength isn't about building walls, Your Majesty. It's about having the courage to keep your heart open, even when it hurts. Even when it's terrifying." He gestured to the circle of attendants surrounding them. "Look at them. They're not attacking, not retreating. They're engaging, learning, growing through this shared experience." The queen's multiple eyes narrowed, though not in anger. But what of betrayal? Of those who would exploit such openness? Her voice carried a note of personal pain, suggesting experiences that went far deeper than mere philosophical debate. "That's where trust comes in," the human explained, his voice unwavering. "Empathy doesn't eliminate risk, but it helps us navigate it with greater wisdom. When we understand others deeply, truly, we can better discern intentions, build stronger connections, and create systems that protect while still allowing growth." As he spoke, something remarkable began to happen. The bioluminescent patterns on the chamber walls started to change, responding to the emotional resonance filling the space. Colors shifted from aggressive reds to calming blues, and the pulsating rhythm slowed to a gentle, soothing cadence. Even the queen's crystalline ornaments began to glow with a soft inner light, as if absorbing and reflecting the transformation occurring around them. The queen's attendants, emboldened by the humans' demonstration, began reaching out to each other, forming connections that transcended their usual hierarchical roles. The chamber transformed into a living tapestry of interspecies communication, each being contributing to a collective understanding that defied conventional boundaries. The queen watched this evolution with an expression that humans might interpret as awe, though filtered through her alien physiology, it manifested as subtle shifts in her translucent skin's coloration and texture. "What you demonstrate," the queen began, her voice carrying a weight that suggested she was processing revelations far beyond the immediate demonstration. "It challenges everything we have built our society upon. Our empire has thrived on control, on precise calculations of power and influence. Yet here you stand, showing us that perhaps our greatest strength has been our greatest limitation." The human, still maintaining his connection with the initial attendant, nodded slowly. "Control is important, Your Majesty, but not at the expense of genuine connection. Your society has achieved incredible things through discipline and order, but imagine what you could accomplish if those achievements were guided by mutual understanding rather than imposed hierarchy." The queen's antennae twitched rapidly, a sign of intense mental processing. She moved to the edge of the circle, observing how her attendants interacted with each other and with the human. Their movements had become more fluid, more organic, as if centuries of rigid protocol were melting away under the influence of this newfound connection. The chamber's atmosphere had transformed from one of sterile efficiency to something resembling a living organism, each component contributing to the whole in ways that defied simple categorization. "You speak of transformation," the queen observed, her voice carrying a note of caution mixed with intrigue, "but such changes require more than demonstrations. They demand sacrifice, adaptation, and most frightening of all, uncertainty." She turned her multifaceted gaze upon her attendants, watching as they engaged in increasingly complex patterns of interaction. "Our society has always valued certainty above all else. Predictability ensures stability, and stability ensures survival." The human released his connection with the attendant, stepping back to address the queen directly. "Survival isn't enough, Your Majesty. True thriving requires embracing uncertainty, because that's where growth happens. On Earth, our greatest advancements came from moments of chaos and confusion, when we were forced to reach beyond our comfort zones and truly connect with others." The queen's crystalline ornaments pulsed with increasing intensity, mirroring the emotional resonance filling the chamber. She extended one of her limbs toward her attendants, watching as they responded not with their usual programmed precision, but with something approaching individual choice. "These beings have served me for countless cycles," she mused, "yet I see now that I have never truly known them. Not as individuals, not as conscious entities with their own desires and dreams." The human nodded, sensing a breakthrough moment approaching. "That's the beauty of empathy, Your Majesty. It doesn't diminish your position or authority. Rather, it enhances it by making your leadership more meaningful, more impactful. When your people feel truly seen and understood, their loyalty becomes something far deeper than obedience." The chamber's bioluminescent patterns continued to evolve, now forming intricate designs that seemed to respond to the emotional currents flowing through the gathered beings. The queen's attendants had begun communicating in ways that went beyond their traditional clicking language, using gestures and postures that suggested emerging creativity and individual expression. Even the ship itself seemed to be responding, its mechanical hum blending with the organic interactions in a symphony of unprecedented harmony. "You ask much of us," the queen stated, though her tone suggested she was beginning to see the possibilities beyond her initial skepticism. "To embrace this path would require dismantling structures that have stood for millennia. It would demand that we question everything we have believed about power, control, and progress." The human met her gaze steadily. "Change rarely comes easily, especially when it challenges fundamental beliefs. But consider this, your empire has conquered countless worlds, mastered technologies beyond human imagination. Yet despite all this, you find yourself seeking answers from a supposedly primitive species. Doesn't that suggest there might be value in exploring different paths?" The queen's response was interrupted by a sudden commotion at the chamber's entrance. A group of her highest-ranking advisors burst in, their usually immaculate forms disheveled, their clicking language accelerated to a fever pitch. The Queen turned to face them, her expression unreadable, as they conveyed urgent news through a flurry of gestures and sounds that the human couldn't fully comprehend. The advisor's arrival shattered the delicate balance of understanding that had been building in the chamber. Their frantic gestures and agitated clicking created waves of disturbance that rippled through the previously harmonious atmosphere. The Queen's crystalline ornaments dimmed noticeably, and the bioluminescent patterns on the walls flickered erratically, reflecting the sudden shift in emotional resonance. "What is the meaning of this intrusion?" the Queen demanded, her voice carrying a sharpness that hadn't been present during her conversation with the human. The lead advisor, a particularly ancient-looking creature with iridescent scales that normally shimmered with authority, now appeared unusually distressed. Its multiple limbs trembled as it delivered its message, the translation mechanism struggling to keep up with the rapid-fire delivery. "The outer colonies," the advisor managed to convey, "they've begun questioning the established order. Reports of spontaneous gatherings, similar to what we witnessed here, are spreading across our territories. The humans broadcast." The creature hesitated, glancing nervously at the captive. "It seems to have reached further than anticipated." The Queen's translucent skin darkened significantly, a clear sign of mounting concern. "Explain yourself clearly," she commanded, moving away from the human and toward her advisors. "How could a single transmission have caused such widespread disruption?" Another advisor stepped forward, its wings vibrating with barely contained anxiety. "Your Majesty, the human's message of empathy and connection has resonated with our people in ways we couldn't have predicted. The colonial governors report that workers are refusing to follow standard protocols, instead engaging in these unauthorized interactions. Productivity is plummeting, and there are whispers of rebellion in sectors we considered most loyal." The human watched this exchange with growing apprehension. He hadn't anticipated that his earlier attempts to communicate with his captors had somehow transmitted beyond this vessel. The realization that his words might have sparked a movement across an entire intergalactic empire filled him with a mixture of hope and dread. The Queen turned back to face him, her multiple eyes blazing with conflicting emotions. "You claimed your demonstration was about connection and understanding," she said, her voice trembling with barely contained emotion. "Yet it appears your influence has triggered chaos across my empire. How do you reconcile this with your philosophy of empathy?" Before the human could respond, another wave of advisors entered the chamber, bearing holographic projections that displayed scenes of unrest throughout the empire. Workers abandoning their posts to engage in spontaneous gatherings, production lines grinding to a halt as beings from different castes mingled freely, and most alarmingly, military units hesitating to enforce traditional protocols. The images painted a picture of an empire teetering on the brink of unprecedented transformation. "This cannot stand," declared one of the senior advisors, its voice carrying the weight of generations of imperial tradition. "We must immediately suppress these disturbances before they spread further. The human must be silenced, and the affected colonies isolated until order can be restored." The Queen's antennae twitched violently, indicating internal conflict. She moved to the center of the chamber, her towering form casting long shadows across the assembled beings. "Silence!" she commanded, her voice reverberating with authority. "No action will be taken until I have fully considered the implications of what we face." Turning to the human, she added, "You have placed me in an impossible position. Explain how your philosophy accounts for this level of disruption." The human took a deep breath, aware that his next words could determine not just his fate, but potentially the future of two civilizations. "Your Majesty, transformation often appears as chaos when viewed through the lens of existing structures. What you're witnessing isn't rebellion or destruction. It's evolution. Your people aren't rejecting their society. They're reaching for something deeper, something more meaningful." The Queen's crystalline ornaments began pulsing erratically, reflecting her internal struggle. "Evolution requires stability," she countered, though her voice lacked its previous conviction. "Without order, everything we have built could collapse into true chaos." "Not necessarily," the human replied, taking a cautious step forward. "Consider this. What if the order you've maintained has been limiting your people's potential? What if this moment represents an opportunity to build something stronger, more resilient, by incorporating these new connections rather than suppressing them?" The chamber fell into tense silence as the queen processed this perspective. Her advisors exchanged worried glances, their clicking language accelerating with concern. Outside the vessel, the stars continued their eternal dance, unaware of the pivotal decision hanging in the balance aboard this alien craft. The Queen's next move would determine not just the fate of her empire, but potentially the course of interspecies relations across the galaxy. Profile. Quen 2.5 Max. 2 p.m. The Queen's crystalline ornaments pulsed with increasing intensity, their light casting intricate patterns across the chamber as she grappled with the weight of the decision before her. Her advisors pressed closer, their agitated clicking forming a discordant symphony that clashed with the lingering harmony of the earlier demonstration. The human captive watched silently, his expression a mixture of hope and apprehension, aware that the delicate balance he had helped create was on the verge of either blossoming into something transformative or collapsing into chaos. "You speak of evolution," the Queen said at last, her voice carrying both skepticism and reluctant curiosity. "Yet evolution is not without its casualties. Species adapt or perish. Empires rise and fall. Are you suggesting we abandon millennia of progress for this uncertainty?" She gestured toward the holographic projections still flickering with scenes of unrest across her vast dominion. "What assurance do I have that this path will not lead to the destruction of everything we have built?" The human stepped forward, his movements deliberate yet respectful. "Your Majesty, evolution doesn't demand abandonment, it demands integration. The structures you've created are not inherently flawed, they're simply incomplete. What your people are experiencing now isn't rebellion against order but a yearning for something deeper, a connection that complements the efficiency and discipline you've cultivated." He paused, allowing his words to settle in the charged atmosphere of the chamber. "Think of it this way, a tree doesn't discard its roots when it grows taller. It deepens them, anchoring itself more firmly while reaching for the sky. Your empire can do the same, retain what works, strengthen it through mutual understanding, and allow new growth to emerge naturally." The Queen's antennae twitched, signaling a shift in her focus. She turned away from her advisors and paced slowly around the chamber, her steps resonating like distant thunder. The bioluminescent patterns on the walls seemed to mirror her internal conflict, shifting between calming blues and restless reds. Finally, she stopped before the human, her multifaceted gaze locking onto his with an intensity that made the air feel heavy. "And if I choose this path," she said, her voice low and measured, "how do I ensure that it does not spiral out of control? How do I prevent these connections from fracturing my empire further?" The human hesitated, knowing that his answer would need to be both honest and reassuring. "Empathy requires trust, Your Majesty, and trust takes time to build. You cannot force it, nor can you dictate its pace. But you can guide it. Encourage open dialogue, foster spaces where your people can safely explore these new connections, and lead by example. Show them that change doesn't mean losing what they value but enhancing it." One of the senior advisors interjected sharply, its iridescent scales flaring with indignation. "This is madness. To coddle such behavior is to invite disorder. Our strength lies in unity through obedience, not this emotional indulgence." The Queen silenced the advisor with a single commanding gesture, though her translucent skin rippled with visible tension. "Enough," she said, her voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. "I will hear no more arguments until I have considered all angles." Turning back to the human, she added, "You claim empathy is strength, yet it seems to weaken the very foundations of control. Explain how this paradox resolves itself." The human nodded, sensing the gravity of the moment. "Control and connection are not opposites, Your Majesty. They are complementary forces. Think of your body. Every cell operates independently, yet they work together seamlessly because they share a common purpose. Your empire can function the same way. By fostering genuine understanding among your people, you create a system where individuals contribute willingly, not out of fear or obligation but because they see themselves as part of something greater." As he spoke, the Queen's crystalline ornaments began to glow softly once more, their light steady and contemplative. She raised one of her slender appendages, tracing a pattern in the air that caused the holographic projections to shift, displaying images of her colonies thriving under traditional protocols. Beside them appeared overlays of the recent gatherings, where beings from different castes mingled freely, their interactions marked by a palpable sense of joy and discovery. "Interesting," she murmured, her voice almost too soft to hear. "These gatherings, they resemble festivals, celebrations of life and connection. And yet, they threaten to disrupt centuries of established order." She turned to face her advisors, who stood frozen in anticipation. "Tell me, what is the true measure of an empire's success? Is it the efficiency of its machines, the precision of its protocols, or the vitality of its people?" The question hung in the air like a challenge, forcing those present to confront uncomfortable truths. The senior advisor who had spoken earlier opened its mandibles to respond, then closed them again, visibly struggling to articulate a defense of the status quo. Meanwhile, some of the younger advisors exchanged hesitant glances, their gestures suggesting a quiet acknowledgement of the human's perspective. The Queen seemed to notice this subtle shift. "Ah," she said, her tone carrying a note of revelation. "Even among you, there is doubt. Perhaps this change has been long overdue." She moved to the center of the chamber, her towering form radiating a quiet authority that silenced even the most fervent dissenters. "We have prided ourselves on our superiority, on our ability to conquer and control. Yet here stands a representative of a species you deemed primitive, offering insights that expose the limitations of our own philosophy." Her attendants, who had remained largely silent throughout the exchange, began to stir, their wings fluttering in unison. One of them approached cautiously, extending a delicate limb toward the Queen in a gesture reminiscent of the human's earlier demonstration. The Queen hesitated, then reached out to meet it, her touch tentative yet deliberate. A ripple of energy passed between them, causing the bioluminescent patterns on the walls to flare brightly. "This is what you were trying to show me," she said, addressing the human once more. "Not just the act of connection, but the transformation it brings, the potential for growth, for renewal." She turned to her advisors, her voice firm yet imbued with a newfound resolve. "We will not suppress this movement. Instead, we will study it, learn from it, and adapt. Our empire will evolve, not through force, but through understanding." The chamber erupted into a flurry of activity as the advisors processed this unprecedented directive. Some clicked their approval, while others retreated to whisper urgently among themselves. The human watched silently, his heart pounding with a mixture of relief and trepidation. He knew that declaring a new direction was only the beginning. Implementing it would require patience, courage, and unwavering commitment. The Queen approached him, her multiple eyes reflecting a complex array of emotions. "You have given me much to consider, human," she said, her voice softer now, almost intimate. "But know this, should this path prove detrimental to my people, I will hold you accountable. Your life, your freedom, all of it rests on the outcome of this experiment." The human met her gaze steadily, his expression resolute. "I understand, Your Majesty. And I believe that what we're building here has the power to transform not just your empire, but relations between our species as well. But transformation always carries risk. The question is whether we have the courage to embrace it." At that moment, the ship shuddered slightly, drawing everyone's attention to the viewport. Outside, a fleet of Imperial vessels had emerged from hyperspace, their sleek forms glinting ominously in the starlight. The Queen's crystalline ornaments dimmed momentarily, a sign of concern. "It appears word of these changes has reached higher echelons," she said, her voice tinged with unease. "The Grand Council will demand answers, and they are not known for their tolerance of deviation." The human felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard rumors of the Grand Council during his captivity, tales of ruthless overseers who maintained absolute control over the Empire's affairs. If they opposed the Queen's decision, the fragile progress made so far could be undone in an instant. "We must act quickly," the Queen declared, her demeanor shifting to one of decisive action. "Human, you will accompany me to the council chambers. Your presence alone may serve as proof of the potential benefits of this new approach." She turned to her advisors, issuing rapid commands in their clicking language. "Prepare the diplomatic envoy. We leave immediately." As preparations unfolded around them, the human found himself caught between awe and dread. The Queen's willingness to champion this cause was both inspiring and terrifying, given the stakes involved. Yet as he followed her toward the exit, he couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was only beginning, a journey that would test not just their resolve, but the very fabric of two civilizations poised on the brink of unprecedented change. The journey to the Grand Council chambers was a blur of hyperspace travel and tense deliberations aboard the Queen's flagship. The human captive found himself seated in an observation deck unlike anything he had ever seen, a transparent dome that offered a panoramic view of the swirling cosmos outside. Beside him, the Queen stood tall, her crystalline ornaments casting prismatic reflections across the chamber as she gazed out at the stars. Her advisors bustled about, their clicking language a constant undercurrent of urgency, yet she remained eerily still, as if drawing strength from the vastness of space. "You are quiet," the Queen observed without turning to face him. "Do you fear what awaits us?" The human exhaled slowly, his breath fogging the cool glass beneath his hands. "Fear doesn't begin to cover it, Your Majesty. This isn't just about me or even your empire anymore. It's about setting a precedent for how our species will coexist. If the Grand Council rejects this path, it could mean war. If they accept it, well, change on this scale is unpredictable." The Queen nodded thoughtfully, her translucent skin shimmering with faint pulses of light. "Unpredictability has always been the domain of chaos, yet you claim it can also be the seed of growth. I find myself torn between centuries of tradition and the promise of something new." She turned to him, her multifaceted eyes reflecting both doubt and determination. "Tell me, human, why do you believe so strongly in this philosophy of empathy? What drives you to risk everything for it?" The question caught him off guard, forcing him to confront the depths of his own conviction. "Because I've seen what happens when we fail to connect," he admitted, his voice tinged with emotion. "On Earth, we've waged wars over misunderstandings, built walls where bridges should have stood, and nearly destroyed ourselves more times than I care to count. But every time we chose empathy over fear, understanding over judgment, we became stronger, not weaker." He paused, searching for words that might resonate with her alien perspective. Empathy isn't just a feeling. It's a choice. A choice to see others not as threats or tools, but as beings worthy of dignity and respect. It's messy, imperfect, and sometimes painful, but it's also the only way forward if we want to build something that lasts. The Queen absorbed his words in silence, her antennae twitching subtly as if processing layers of meaning beyond what he had said aloud. "And you believe my people are capable of such a transformation?" she asked, her tone carrying a note of vulnerability that surprised him. "I don't just believe it, I know it," he replied firmly. "Your empire thrives because of its ability to adapt, to conquer challenges most would deem insurmountable. This is no different. You're not asking them to abandon who they are, you're inviting them to become more." Before the Queen could respond, the ship emerged from hyperspace, revealing a massive orbital station orbiting a dying star. Its surface gleamed with metallic spires and glowing conduits, a testament to the technological prowess of the alien civilization. The sight filled the human with both awe and trepidation, knowing that within those walls lay the fate of countless lives, including his own. The Grand Council chambers were unlike anything the human had imagined. Towering columns of bioluminescent crystal rose from the floor, their light pulsating in rhythm with the collective consciousness of the gathered council members. Each member was encased in a hovering throne-like apparatus, their forms partially obscured by cascading streams of data and holographic projections. At the center of the room stood a dais, upon which the Queen now positioned herself, flanked by her advisors, and him. As the doors sealed behind them, the chamber fell silent, the hum of machinery replaced by an oppressive weight of expectation. One of the council members, a towering figure adorned with intricate patterns of light, spoke first, its voice resonating through the chamber like rolling thunder. "Queen Ardina, you bring before us a human captive. Explain yourself." The Queen stepped forward, her presence commanding despite the intimidating surroundings. "Esteemed Council, I present not a captive, but a teacher, one who has revealed truths that challenge the very foundation of our society. Through him, we have glimpsed the power of empathy, of connection beyond hierarchy and protocol. Our empire stands at a crossroads, and I propose that we embrace this path rather than suppress it." A murmur rippled through the council, their luminous forms flickering with agitation. Another member, its crystalline body refracting light into razor-sharp beams, spoke next. "You speak of weakness masquerading as strength. Connection breeds disorder, and disorder threatens the stability of our dominion. Shall we cast aside millennia of progress for this indulgence? The Queen's response was immediate and unyielding. Progress is not measured solely by conquest or efficiency. True strength lies in resilience, in the ability to adapt and grow. What we face is not disorder, but evolution, a chance to redefine what it means to thrive. The human felt the weight of countless eyes, both physical and metaphysical, upon him as the council turned their attention to him. One of them, a being whose form seemed to shift and ripple like liquid mercury, addressed him directly. "Human, you claim empathy is superior to control. Prove it. Show us why we should abandon proven methods for your fragile ideals." Summoning every ounce of courage, the human stepped forward, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "I cannot prove empathy in the way you understand proof. It must be experienced, not explained. But consider this. Your empire spans galaxies, yet you stand here divided, afraid of change, clinging to structures that may no longer serve you. Empathy offers unity without uniformity, strength without suppression. It allows beings to remain themselves while contributing to something greater." To his surprise, several council members exchanged glances, their luminous forms dimming slightly, a sign, perhaps, of contemplation. The Queen seized the opportunity, addressing the council once more. "Let us conduct an experiment. Allow the colonies currently embracing these changes to continue unhindered. Monitor their progress, measure their productivity, and assess their loyalty. If they falter, I will personally dismantle this movement. But if they flourish, then we must reconsider our definition of success." The chamber fell silent again, the council members retreating into private deliberations conveyed through flashes of light and subtle shifts in their forms. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, each second heavy with anticipation. Finally, the lead council member, the towering figure who had spoken first, rose from its throne, its voice carrying finality. "Very well, Queen Ardina. We grant you this trial period. But know this, should your experiment fail, the consequences will extend far beyond your reign. The stability of our empire depends on the outcome." With that, the session adjourned, leaving the Queen and her entourage to return to the flagship. As they departed, the human couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part was yet to come. Success would require not just patience, but active participation from all levels of the empire, and failure could mean disaster. Weeks passed, and reports began to trickle in from the experimental colonies. Productivity had initially dipped, as predicted, but soon stabilized at levels comparable to, or even exceeding, previous benchmarks. More importantly, morale among the workers soared, leading to unprecedented levels of innovation and collaboration. The Queen herself visited several colonies, witnessing firsthand the transformative power of genuine connection. One evening, aboard her flagship, she summoned the human to her private quarters. The chamber was smaller than the grand halls he had grown accustomed to, its walls adorned with artifacts from across her empire. She stood by a viewport, gazing out at the infinite expanse of stars. "You were right," she said simply, her voice carrying a mixture of gratitude and awe. "This path is fraught with challenges, but it holds promise beyond measure. My people are beginning to see themselves not as cogs in a machine, but as threads in a tapestry, each unique, yet essential to the whole." The human smiled, a wave of relief washing over him. "Thank you for trusting me, Your Majesty. And thank you for having the courage to lead your people toward something greater." The Queen turned to face him, her crystalline ornaments glowing softly. "No, human. Thank you for showing me that true strength lies not in domination, but in understanding. For teaching me that even queens must evolve." As they stood there, bathed in the soft light of distant stars, the human realized that their journey was far from over. But for the first time, he allowed himself to hope that two vastly different civilizations might one day walk side by side, united not by force, but by the simple, profound act of seeing each other truly.